Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay, gentlemen. Curio, last episode. Not a good time in North Africa. It was as if, it's like he was in first place the entire race, and then there's 10 more meters of the marathon, and he breaks his ankle and dies and comes in last. It was looking so good, and then just so terrible for him. Let's see what happens next. First video of the day. Sorry if I'm a little tired. Got my coffee. I'm ready to go. If you're new to the channel, hello, my name is Connor. I like to learn about history through YouTube recommendations. The original link to the video will be at the top of the description below, like always. And right below that is the link to the Discord. Click on that. It'll send you right over there. Would love to have you. Join the party, the club, the family. More the merrier. Pull up a chair. All right, if you are not ready to learn, get out. There's the door. You're in the wrong class. Home ec is down the hall. Let's go. Or just chill, that's fine.
Gaius Julius Caesar and Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus were among the most successful generals in Roman history, who almost doubled the size of the Republic during their career. However, both of them were about to meet the toughest challenge of their lives.
I'm hearing everything, don't worry.
The Roman civil war was reaching its peak, and the two leaders would fight against each other for the first time at Dyrrachium. In our videos, we often explore how information was crucial.
Get that money, man. I wish I had an ad
recommended us
sponsor.
/kings and generals, or click the link in the description.
Curio just had a bad time. Let's see.
So far, Caesar himself had been largely successful in the civil war. His campaign in Spain had secured the west, as well as neutralizing some of Pompey's best legions, and he had been recruiting in Gaul and Italy, adding at least another 6 legions. However, his subordinates had not been as effective.
No.
Curio had lost 2 legions in North Africa, and his inability to take the province meant that supplies of grain in Rome would still be stretched. Around the same time, Gaius Antonius, the brother of Mark Antony, had lost 1.5 legions in Illyria to defection. To make matters worse, the veterans of the Gallic Wars, the 9th Legion in North Italy, had mutinied. Consular elections were due in Rome, and with both the consuls having fled with Pompey, there was no one to oversee them, threatening the legitimacy of Caesar's cause. His first priority was the 9th Legion, as many of his veteran legions were in a similar position. Rushing to their camp, Caesar made an impassioned speech, pointing out that as a general renowned for his quick action, he could not be blamed for prolonging the war. He then chastised the men, saying that he had brought them fame and fortune, and they now repaid him by mutineering. The only suitable punishment for the legion would be decimation. The legion begged Caesar to reconsider. Magnanimous as ever, Caesar only executed 12 of the ringleaders, bringing the legion back into the fold.
I'll only
Caesar needed
12.
to maintain an air of legitimacy, but with no consuls in Rome, the elections could not be held. Lepidus, a praetor and close ally of Caesar, suggested Caesar be named dictator so that he could preside over the election. Elections happened, and Caesar was appointed consul alongside another ally, Publius Servilius. With consular power, Caesar no longer needed the position of dictator, and resigned after just 11 days. With these issues now handled, Caesar gathered his force at Brundisium to finally confront Pompey. The latter was gathering a huge force from all corners of the Roman world in Thessalonica. In total, Pompey had around 60,000. The latter was gathering a huge force from all corners of the Roman world in Thessalonica. In total, Pompey had around 60,000 men, 9 full legions, approximately 4,000 archers and slingers, 7,000 cavalry, plus some auxiliaries. There were a further 2 legions.
What is auxiliary? I asked this before, and one of you answered me.
en route from Syria under the command of Metellus Scipio. Pompey had spent time drilling and equipping his men. However, only 4 of his legions were veterans. Cicero, who was with Pompey, described the bulk of the force as raw recruits. Mixed cultures and languages made organization difficult.
That's not good.
Trusting in numbers,
I always say that when you have equal numbers or relatively equal numbers to each side of 2 opposing armies, the one that has the same language and culture and most importantly language will obviously be able to much more easily direct their troops in a more organized way than the army that might even have more numbers but are more divided in terms of language and therefore more difficult to form a cohesive attack or defense.
Pompey marched to the west of Greece, preparing to create a defensive line down the coast. Caesar, in Brundisium, had gathered his 10 veteran legions, all under strength due to years of campaigning, and 2 newly recruited ones. However, he only had enough ships to move half.
Sorry
his
guys,
force
I don't
across.
pause. I just want to see what the distance is there. It always helps me to understand what's going on in the battle when I know the general idea of just... So that's almost 50 miles. That's actually longer across than I thought it would be. Okay.
And the Adriatic was being guarded by Pompey's vast navy under the command of Bibulus. With the path through Illyria being too mountainous for rapid movement, Caesar would have to find a way of crossing the sea. However, he did have one key advantage. The Roman calendar drifted over time and needed to be constantly updated by the Pontifex Maximus.
What a great map.
Caesar...
I love good maps. And as we're going on, this is one of the things that I really thought Epic History TV had over Kings and Generals. But Kings and Generals is stepping up their map game, and it just makes me... I'm not the best learner, as you guys know. And when there's something like... It makes me sound so stupid. Like I need like a picture book in order to pay attention. Damn it. You get what I mean.
The Roman calendar drifted over time and needed to be constantly updated
I
by
like
the
pretty
Pontifex
maps.
Maximus. Caesar had not performed this duty due to his constant campaigning, but he nonetheless knew the true date. It was late autumn. Bibulus was operating under the impression that it was winter and had therefore kept his ships in port, confident that Caesar would not attempt a winter crossing. Ordering his men to leave slaves and baggage behind, Caesar set sail with 7 of his veteran legions. By the time Bibulus found out, Caesar and his men had already landed. Frustrated, Bibulus began a blockade, capturing and burning 30 of Caesar's ships as they returned to Brundisium, and preventing the rest from transporting the remainder of Caesar's army.
So is he
Soon after his landing, he was able to take both Oricum and Apollonia. Caesar then sent for Bullius Rufus, a man who Caesar had captured twice, once at Corfinium and once at Ilerda, to treat with Pompey. With his force divided, Caesar was possibly having second thoughts and was seeking a truce, offering the same terms as before. Nonetheless, Caesar continued marching his force towards Dyrrachium, an important supply center for the Pompeians. However, Caesar overestimated Vipilius's loyalties. The latter met Pompey and informed him of Caesar's location.
Well, you captured him twice. Didn't it say that? Why would he trust him this time?
His loyalties. The latter met Pompey and informed him of Caesar's location, army composition, and strategy. Now the Senate's commander planned to exploit this. He could not allow Dyrrachium to fall into Caesar's hands, and pushed his men on a
Pompey and
forced
Caesar
march.
are about to meet.
Caesar still had 70 miles and 3 rivers to cross before reaching the city, and Pompey could still beat him there. The march took its toll on his more inexperienced men, with some of his Epirot allies deserting due to this push and their fear of Caesar, but he was ultimately successful, reaching Dyrrachium first. Labienus's public speech swearing to follow Pompey at whatever cost restored morale, and the army encamped outside Dyrrachium, forcing Caesar to stop his advance, withdrawing to a defensible position on the southern bank of the river Apsus. Pompey knew that Caesar had legitimacy as consul and could force his claim to be the rightful leader of Rome in peace, so he had to defeat Caesar in the field.
Interesting.
He moved his army south, encamping on the opposite side of a river to Caesar. Once again though, Pompey proved indecisive. Caesar had just around 30,000 men, compared to Pompey's 60,000. But Pompey did not trust his less experienced men to be able to defeat Caesar's veterans in a strong defensive position. A standoff continued for weeks. Caesar used
like launching
this time
arrows
to his
at each other or
advantage.
anything?
Bibulus's navy had to constantly come ashore to resupply. Caesar dispatched small raiding parties to attack these men whenever they came ashore, forcing Bibulus to go.
Sorry, who are these
navy
guys?
Had to Caesar used this time to his advantage. Bibulus's navy had to constantly come ashore to resupply. Caesar dispatched small raiding parties to attack these men whenever they came ashore, forcing Bibulus to go further and further afield to get supplies. Bibulus knew he could not abandon his position, but after weeks of harassment...
Sorry, it reminds me of that crab. That's just like... oh, God.
...came ashore, forcing Bibulus to go further and further afield to get supplies. Bibulus knew he could not abandon his position, but after weeks of harassment, his men were resorting to drinking the dew collected on leather awnings. In desperation, he tried to parley with Caesar, offering to send peace envoys on his behalf to Pompey if Caesar would stop. Caesar countered by saying that he would want to send his own envoys, and that if Bibulus wanted to resupply unmolested, he would have to allow Caesar's transports to pass. All these talks had done was reveal to Caesar how effective his strategy was. Soon after, old and now in increasingly poor health, Bibulus died, and that left the fleet leaderless.
Things are looking
Antony
good.
had tried
My voice just
numerous
cracked
times
for
to
Caesar.
break out of the blockade, but had been stopped every time. The Pompeians had kept him under significant pressure, even taking a small island in the harbor to try and trap Antony even further. However, Antony was a talented lieutenant and had retaken the island and had kept his men on alert for any opportunity. It came in January 48 BC. Antony only had enough ships to transport the 3 remaining veteran legions and 1 newly recruited one. His ships were almost intercepted by Pompey's fleet, and he was forced to change route, landing at Nymphaeum. Both Pompey and Caesar's armies had to rush to Antony's position, Pompey to cut him off from Caesar, and Caesar to unite his forces. Pompey had a head start and a shorter route, Caesar having to march a considerable distance in order to be able to ford the river, and Pompey got to Antony's position first. He ordered his men to not light any fires and lie in wait to try and ambush Antony as he moved to meet Caesar. However, some locals sympathetic to the Caesarian cause alerted Antony, and he set up camp, sending a messenger to inform Caesar of his location. When Pompey found Antony encamped and Caesar closing in, he realized he was in danger of being attacked on 2 sides and withdrew to a safer position near Asparagium. With his full army now joined, Caesar started to take more aggressive actions. Hearing that Scipio was now in Macedonia with his Syrian legions, Caesar sent 2 legions under Gnaeus Domitius Calvinus to cut him off. The Thessalians and Aetolians had sent envoys saying they'd support Caesar in return for garrisons, and so Caesar sent the rookie 27th Legion under Cassius Longinus to Thessaly, and G. Calvisius Sabinus with 5 cohorts to Aetolia to acquire more grain. Scipio did march his force towards Thessaly, threatening Longinus, but Calvinus and his legions were able to apply enough pressure to stop him uniting his force with Pompey. Meanwhile, one of Pompey's sons, Gnaeus, attacked Caesar's ships, destroying his whole navy in the area, leaving Caesar stranded in Greece and cut off from Italy.
Well done.
With his navy destroyed, Caesar knew he had to force an engagement with Pompey soon. He first attempted to do this at Asparagium, drawing up his army for battle. But Pompey, on the high ground, refused to commit. In order to force Pompey's hand, Caesar decided to march on Dyrrachium. By threatening this crucial supply center, Pompey would be forced to respond. However, he did not want to reveal his plan to Pompey, and so planned on taking a circuitous route to hide his intentions. He struck camp early in the morning in April.
He's going to go around.
The plan worked. Initially, Pompey thought Caesar was withdrawing due to lack of supplies, and it was only after his scouts reported Caesar's movements that Pompey realized what Caesar was planning. He then gave chase. Caesar marched through the night, only giving his men a brief break, and was able to reach Dyrrachium first, setting up his camp on high ground outside the city. Pompey arrived soon after and encamped his force on high ground just south of Caesar's position. Pompey's army outnumbered Caesar's considerably. Having sent part of his force to occupy Scipio and part to southern Greece, Caesar had just 35 to 40,000 men and 3,000.
Sorry, I was gonna say, why wouldn't Pompey just go back to Dyrrachium if he saw Caesar retreating? But he wasn't sure that he didn't know that Caesar was doing what he was doing and going around, and maybe he didn't want to give up the high ground that he had.
After and encamped his force on high ground just south of Caesar's position. Pompey's army outnumbered Caesar's considerably. Having sent part of his force to occupy Scipio and part to southern Greece, Caesar had just 35 to 40,000 men and 3,000 cavalry. Pompey, on the other hand, had around 53,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry.
Doesn't seem like they were all the same quality, though.
More experienced.
Yeah.
Pompey did have the crucial advantage of having a better supply line. Using his navy, he could ship supplies from Dyrrachium to his camp, whereas Caesar would be forced to live off the land and requisition food from local tribes. Even this would be difficult, as Pompey's forces had already plundered the area in the previous months. Noting the particularly hilly topography of the area, Caesar decided to fall back on one of his most favored tactics and fortify the hills around Pompey's position, encircling his enemy and cutting off their supplies. This would be a difficult task considering the size of the armies, but the natural topography simplified the task. When Pompey realized what Caesar was doing, he countered by constructing his own defenses. He ordered his men to fortify as many hills as possible, forcing Caesar to extend his own fortifications further and further, stretching his army. Frequent skirmishes broke out between the two forces, each harassing the other to try and slow their build. On one occasion, the 9th Legion, attempting to fortify a camp on a hilltop, came under intense masses of missile fire from the Pompeians on a nearby hill. Caesar, who was with the 9th at the time, ordered them to abandon the construction and retreat down the slope. He also commanded legionary engineers to place wattle screens to dig trenches behind to hinder the enemy from pursuing the legion. He then placed slingers in commanding positions to cover the withdrawal. The 9th was pursued by the Pompeian missiles and light infantry, who pushed the screens into the trenches to cross them. Caesar, fearing a rout, ordered Antony, commander of the 9th, to charge the Pompeians. In a brilliant display of discipline, the 9th immediately turned, flung their javelins, and charged back up the slope. The Pompeians, only being lightly armed, retreated, and the 9th was able to withdraw in good order. Soon after, Caesar's defenses were complete. It was now late June.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't know exactly, the animation seems pretty, serious walls here or whatnot, but I just wonder exactly what sort of fortifications are we talking here, because over this huge distance, clearly they didn't just like build a wall or something like that, but I feel like I want to go sometime more deep into the engineers of any time period really, but maybe starting around here, and just see what their education was and what the normal, like when Caesar asked them, okay, construct defenses and a barrier over this area. What exactly are we talking there? And how difficult would it be? I hope I get my point across.
His men's greater experience and discipline,
I'd like to learn more about what exactly the fortifications were.
Now had Pompey's force pinned against the sea. This was a great achievement. A smaller, less supplied force had never done this before against superior numbers. Though low on grain, Caesar did manage to level the playing field by having control of all the sources of fresh water in the area. Pompey was now forced to dig wells and rely on supplies from the sea. Furthermore, Caesar could now send his men further afield to gather supplies without fear of harassment. Pompey, however, was a skilled general and had his own strategies to keep Caesar under pressure, sending missile units to harass Caesar's lines at night, targeting the light of their campfires. He also attempted to bring his cavalry into play, which, stuck behind the fortifications, had done little so far. Boarding them onto ships, he sent them up the coast to Dyrrachium. From here, they would be free from the confines of the fortifications and could forage without putting a burden on Pompey's supplies, as well as attack Caesar's line and could forage from here, putting a burden on Pompey's supplies, as well as attack Caesar's line from the rear. Around this same time, in early July, Caesar received word that there were citizens of Dyrrachium who were willing to be bribed and give him the town. Looking to capitalize, Caesar went to the town with a small armed escort, leaving Publius Cornelius Sulla in charge.
This seems like a trap.
However, when he reached the outskirts of the city, he was attacked by the Pompeian cavalry, who attempted to surround Caesar, and he only just managed to cut his way out with his men and survive the ambush.
If that worked, I mean, regardless, that was super smart. And if that worked, that in killing or capturing Caesar, that would have been crazy. Having all of these things set up, and then like, oh, we can go take Dyrrachium without much fighting, and just a little. It's crazy how if that worked, that would have just changed history completely, and it almost did.
Caesar was away from the main line. Pompey had also launched 3 simultaneous offensives on the fortifications. He ordered 4 legions
Pompey,
to concentrate on a point in the center
you know what you're
of
doing.
the line, and 1 legion each to attack 2 other points in the line. The point the 4 legions were attacking was atop a hill and well fortified, but only defended by 500 men of the 6th Legion. The cohort was hard pressed, thousands of missiles being fired into their position, but the men held on doggedly, confident that reinforcements would be arriving soon. They were correct. Quickly as he could, Sulla had marched 2 legions to their relief, and upon seeing this new force, the Pompeians retreated. According to Caesar, every man of this unit suffered some kind of injury. The other 2 attacks had also been repelled, one by 3 cohorts and another by Caesar's German auxiliaries, who sallied out taking heavy losses.
Is that what auxiliary is? Is it like a mercenary? Oh god, I gotta go back.
Caesar claimed that the Pompeians lost 2,000 men.
Someone please remind me what an auxiliary is.
In total, Caesar claimed that the Pompeians lost 2,000 men in these battles, and the Caesarians just 20. It is likely that the citizens of Dyrrachium were Pompey's agents who had lured Caesar into a trap. Pompey was proving a worthy and cunning enemy,
for
but
sure.
Caesar's veterans had proved their mettle. Bolstered by the confidence of their
A lot of
victories,
respect gained for
Caesar
Pompey
would march
this
his
episode.
army out in battle formation to offer battle to
I gotta
Pompey.
shut up.
Caesar would march his army out in battle formation to offer battle to Pompey as a sign of strength. Pompey also drew his army up for battle so as not to lose face, but refused to engage. He would need to.
I just want to say too, I know a lot of you guys say, "Don't worry, don't shut up," or that I keep saying like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and like you have to say you're sorry, and you guys are very kind, thank you, and I just sort of say it. I don't know why, but
as not to lose face, but refused to engage. He would need to orchestrate a situation where he would have overwhelming numbers in order to contend with Caesar's veterans. Longinus and Sabinus had been successful in taking Aetolia and had taken all the towns between Epirus and Corinth. They now planned to push past the Isthmus of Corinth and into the Peloponnese, but found their path blocked by a Pompeian force. Nonetheless, their success was crucial in giving Caesar an abundance of supplies from these new Greek territories. With more successes under his belt, Caesar again sent a peace delegation, this time to Scipio, hoping to convince the latter to talk to Pompey. But even though Scipio at first listened with interest, his officers were having none of it. Meanwhile at Dyrrachium,
what do you mean?
Caesar fortified the two approaches to the town, cutting the Pompeian cavalry in the area off from the supplies there. With the cavalry now unable to sustain themselves, Pompey withdrew them by sea back to his entrenchments. But Pompey's food was still running low, and he knew he would have to soon force a breakout.
Can we just admire this amazing military setup right now? This feels like if you're in a game, I might try to get into like Hearts of Iron or something, like a strategy game where it's really late in the game and everyone has like their most maxed out soldiers and their best equipment and all their defenses. Like this is what it looks like. Like this is the map that it looks like when two good players, which Caesar and Pompey are, play for a long time in a game and get to the end where they have these huge, supply lines and fortresses. I love it.
Food was still running low, and he knew he would have to soon force a breakout. To try and achieve this, Pompey's men occupied the original fortifications of the 9th, which were between the two armies' fortifications, and expanded on them, making a second, larger camp that encompassed the first.
This is what a battle
They also
looks
added
like
a long wall
with
from
two
the camp to a
competent
nearby
sides.
river to secure a water supply. This would act as a forward base from where Pompey could strike. Pompey suddenly had a stroke of luck when two Gallic officers who served Caesar during the Gallic Wars deserted. They had detailed intel about Caesar's defenses and knew where the weak points were, and they now passed all this information to Pompey. At the southern end of Caesar's defenses, where the fortifications met the coast, Caesar's 9th Legion was stationed under Marcellinus. After having been forced to withdraw from their original camp, they had constructed a second camp and fortifications that stretched to the coast. Behind this, they had constructed a second line of defenses facing south.
I really want to know
preventing
what kind of
Pompey landing
fortifications
troops behind and
we're
attacking
talking.
their rear. To complete the defenses, an extra line of defenses.
What did he say?
Second line of defenses facing south, preventing. Behind this, they had constructed a second line of defenses facing south, preventing Pompey landing troops behind and attacking their rear. To complete the defenses, an extra line of defenses would need to be made between the two walls, linking them together and blocking any attack from the sea. But these defenses were incomplete. Pompey formulated his plan. He would attack their inner wall with his legions, landing light infantry and missile troops to the south to attack the outer wall, while even more troops would be landed between the two walls.
I like Pompey.
Doing so, he would attack the 9th from 3 sides. This took a lot of careful planning and timing, and he withdrew his legions from the 9th's old fort and behind his own lines to coordinate. After a couple of days of preparation, he was ready. He moved 60 cohorts of legionaries, around 30,000 men, to attack Caesar's inner fortifications, while the light infantry was moved by boat behind the outer wall. As they began their attack, more men were simultaneously landed at the gap between the entrenchments. There were only 2 cohorts of the 9th present at the time, the rest still being in camp. These 1,000 men now found themselves under furious attack from 3 sides by overwhelming numbers. Desperately, they tried to form a line and sent word to Marcellinus for help. But the numbers were too much, and the men broke and ran. As they did, they ran into the reinforcing cohorts sent by Marcellinus, causing chaos in the narrow gap between the walls. The Pompeians closed in on Marcellinus's camp, which was now only defended by a couple of cohorts. Luckily, Antony, who was close at hand, managed to organize 6,000 men and came to their aid, stopping the Pompeian advance. he was soon joined by Caesar, alerted by smoke signals, and another 6,500 men. Both forces now had most of their men committed to this part of the line.
I thought Romans or Caesar's side was screwed
While
there.
Pompey's main force had been pushing into the 9th's camp, more men had already begun construction of a fort outside of Caesar's fortifications to the south. The blockade had been broken.
Huh? Wait, what?
Into the 9th's camp. More men had already begun construction of a fort outside of Caesar's fortifications to the south. The blockade had been broken. Caesar ordered his men to begin construction of a trench, plugging the gap between the two walls. While this was being done, Caesar's scouts spotted a Pompeian legion moving back.
I cannot stress to you enough just how badly I want to know how big these fortifications are, because clearly they're big enough where they form a bottleneck. But how big can they possibly be if you only have so much time to build them? I really want to know how big these brown gate things indicating the fortifications. I want to know just what they look like.
This was being done, Caesar's scouts spotted a Pompeian legion moving back into the 9th Legion's old fort. If Pompey took this fort, he would be able to make a link between his new fort in the south and his old fortifications. Caesar was determined to stop this from happening. Gathering around 17,000 men and leaving 1,000 to continue entrenching, Caesar took a circuitous route, concealing his force as long as possible, and then launched the attack. His left wing, where Caesar himself was, pushed into the fort, forcing the Pompeian legion back into the inner camp. Caesar's right wing, however, had stumbled across the Pompeian entrenchments that led to the river. Thinking these were part of the fort, they followed them, looking for a gate through. When they reached the river and realized their mistake, they managed to break down points in the defenses, breaking through, followed by the cavalry, but they had wasted precious time. Pompey had seen what was happening and sent all his heavy infantry, 25,000 men, to assist the legion in the fort. The cavalry rode ahead of the legions and fell upon the Caesarian cavalry of the right flank, routing them almost instantly. The infantry around them, seeing their comrades fleeing and Pompey's men closing in, also ran. The narrow passages they had made through the entrenchments became clogged, and some men took to jumping from the ramparts into the ditches to try and escape. Many were trampled to death. Inside the fort itself, Pompey's legion was fighting back with renewed courage. Caesar's left, afraid that they were about to be trapped inside of the narrow confines of the fort, also began to break, retreating through the gate. Caesar tried to stop the rout, grabbing onto fleeing standard bearers and ordering them to stand their ground. One, overcome by panic, even tried to stab Caesar, but he was saved by his bodyguards. Caesar's entire force that had been committed to the attack had
To be fair, I'm sure there are some points in battle where none of us can, maybe if, and you guys watching are soldiers who have been in some, chances are none of us have experienced what it's like to be cornered, and I'm sure at a certain point, no matter how much training you have, some survival instinct kicks in when you're trapped and you're really about to die. But then again, it is Caesar, and he tried to stab him. But yeah, I'm sure, I can't imagine what it must be like when you're faced with certain death, even when a superior officer is right there. I've never been in the military, I don't know.
Pompey, fearing Caesar had laid a trap, did not pursue, and the narrow breaches in the defenses stopped his cavalry pursuing further. If he had, he may well have been able to destroy Caesar's army. In total, Caesar gives his dead as being 32 officers, centurions, and tribunes, almost 1,000 legionnaires, and 200 horsemen. He had also lost many men as prisoners, perhaps as many as 1,000. On the orders of Labienus, all of these men were killed. Pompey was hailed as Imperator, but as a sign of respect, refused the symbolic bay leaves that went with the title, due to his victory being over fellow Romans. Caesar,
I like Pompey a lot.
After having committed almost 3 months to the battle, pulled away his full force from Dyrrachium, defeated. The Pompeians took this as a full retreat, and word was sent to Eastern kings that the war was already won.
I just want to say, this whole time I thought Caesar to be that like battle-hardened, general, and these other guys like Pompey, specifically Pompey being the main guy of the main other guy opposed to Caesar, wasn't. I just imagined he wasn't as militarily adept, but clearly I was wrong, very wrong, and that was two great generals going at
However,
it.
Pompey had failed to strike a killing blow. He had
And he's
done
respectful.
well to break out of Caesar's encirclement, but had missed the opportunity to use his overwhelming numbers. Caesar was a dangerous enemy and could not be left any space to regroup. Nonetheless, Caesar was able to carry out an ordered withdrawal of his army with only light harassment from Pompey's forces, pulling back to Apollonia. As he did so, he comforted his men, saying that just as Gergovia had preceded Alesia, so too would this defeat at Dyrrachium be followed by a far greater victory. Once again, shout out to Backblaze for sponsoring this video.
That was awesome. That episode was awesome. Amazing. That was one of my favorite Kings and Generals videos, period. Definitely my favorite in this series so far. Just seeing two really capable generals go at it. That was awesome. Guys, I hope you learned something like I definitely did. You guys are usually smarter than I am when it comes to these subjects. If you can answer any of the questions I had, you guys are always great at that. Thank you so much. Hit all the buttons, all this stuff. Bell icon, see when my next videos are coming out. I'll be definitely coming out with more today, get into the 30 Years' War later, and continue this series either again today or for sure tomorrow. That was great. Awesome experience. See you guys next time.